Welcome back into Cougar Sports Saturday. Kyle Ireland, Mitch Harper. We are live from Boulder, Colorado as BYU gets ready to take on the Buffaloes tonight. And Mitch, BYU, we talked about this earlier in the show. What's more important for them, the offense or the defense, for being able to pull out a victory against CU tonight? Let us know your thoughts by texting in your answer to 57500. Mitch, I think that, L.J. Martin, you looked at what he did last year in the Alamo Bowl, running for 88 yards and 2 scores. That was pretty big for BYU to win that bowl game. But how important is L.J. Martin for BYU's ability to pull out a victory tonight?
He carries his team. The season goes as far as L.J. Martin takes it. The season is on L.J. Martin's shoulders. There's just no way to slice it any other way. If you lose L.J. Martin at any point in the season, the prospects of this season go down the drain. You have no depth at running back right now. There is no alternative to L.J. Martin, and it's discouraging because this running back position group outside of L.J. Martin has kind of evaporated a little bit. You had Pokai Honga abruptly leave the team due to personal reasons by day 3 of fall camp. Hinckley Ropati gets his NCAA waiver denied for another year of eligibility. They probably shouldn't have banked on that to begin with, BYU. They probably should have been looking at other options from the get-go because there was hopes that he was going to be ready to go in spring ball, and then he wasn't cleared then, and then he goes into the portal. So they probably shouldn't have banked on that to begin with. And then Sione Moa gets banged up. And Enoch Nawahine in and out of injuries. He's going to be good to go this week. You got Jovesa Damuni, who has really not played. He's a speedster, maybe the fastest guy in the running back unit. And then Preston Rex, who suffered an ACL injury last year. It was a safety. Now he's converting over to running back. Good athlete in high school is Preston Rex, but it's a thin position group. And BYU's got one of the best ground attacks in college football this year because of L.J. Martin and, to a lesser extent, Bear Bachmeier. So L.J. Martin's significance to this team is huge. And if BYU's going to win this game tonight, which I think they should, L.J. Martin's got to do his thing and get over 100 yards. That's just a minimum. That's an expectation for what L.J. Martin should produce, and BYU needs that every single week.
Yeah, L.J. is averaging 8.6 yards per carry right now, and you mentioned Bear Bachmeier. He's the second leading carrier for this BYU team as far as rushes are concerned. He's got 22 on the season. L.J.'s got 40. 5 more for Bear than Sione Moa at 17, and so you mentioned the thinness there. The depth at running back is something that I'm going to look at and see how much BYU wants to utilize Bear Bachmeier's legs and take some of that burden off of L.J. Martin. I talked to Aaron Roderick this week about that, and it was interesting because I felt like Bear took a number of hits against East Carolina a week ago. I'm curious to see if they're willing to run him against this Colorado team now that they don't have Moa to be able to back up L.J. Martin, or if they're just going to give L.J. Martin, 25 touches tonight and seeing where that takes them. Because if L.J., even if let's take his 8.6 yards per carry, Mitch, if he cuts that in half, 4.3 yards per carry, like BYU wins the game with that, in my opinion.
Yeah, BYU's the better football team than Colorado. Colorado defensively, they are not a good team. Rush defense is 121st nationally in college football. Total defense, 110th. And it's not like it's been a gauntlet of a schedule. They had Delaware, Wyoming in there. Wyoming, tough defense, sure. Georgia Tech's really good, and they're in a battle right now with Wake Forest. And then they also had a game on the road at Houston in Big 12 play. But Colorado's defense is not good. BYU should have success, I think, both on the ground and through the air. And I think what's exciting for BYU going into this game, even though they're thin at running back, you feel good about where Bear Bachmeier's at as a quarterback. Because what he did in that game against East Carolina, he was accurate. He was efficient. You felt like you could be the BYU offenses of old where you're stretching the ball downfield. It felt like in the games against Portland State and Stanford, and Aaron Roderick acknowledged this, that they didn't feel like they needed to throw the football, but there wasn't even any thought to throw downfield. And you're thinking, is this a byproduct of playing a freshman quarterback? Well, you saw some signs last week against East Carolina that they can take those shots. I still think Bears' arm strength maybe can get a little bit better at times, but I thought his accuracy, the ball placement were really good last week. And also, too, Bear Bachmeier comes into Big 12 play. He has yet to commit a turnover. Think back to last year in the Alamo Bowl. BYU had 2 picks, Got 158 yards. Like
3 if you count Gary's.
the passing from Jake Retzloff last year in the Alamo Bowl was not the reason they won. And I would expect that they're going to be passing the football at a much higher clip today than they did in last December's Alamo Bowl.
Do you think that without Moa, it affects Aaron Roderick's game plan without that depth behind LJ to be able to just be like, hey, like, we've got to keep Bear upright. We've got to keep him safe, so we can't use the quarterback run game as much.
You got to keep LJ healthy too. And, does that limit his count too? I mean, I'd like to think you don't, because Kalani's always said you got to spar, you got to battle, you got to compete. But it weighs in the back of my mind with LJ, because I'm telling you, he is critical to this team. If LJ plays, I think he can almost win any game in the schedule. But if he doesn't play, my outlook for these games changes drastically, because L.J. Martin is the best running back in the Big 12. BYU is the best rushing offense in the Big 12, and they'll look to maintain that tonight against the Buffs. BYU in Colorado, 8:15 kick. Let's hear from a BYU offensive lineman that will protect for L.J. Martin and Bear, Andrew Gentry, next.